Welcome back to World of Immersion. Following the opening of Wonder Woman Flight of Courage a couple weeks ago, we thought it would be a fantastic idea to re-rank all of our favorite roller coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain from worst to best. Six Flags Magic Mountain is the park that I visited more than any other park in the world. I visit almost every week, so I feel like I definitely have a really good grasp on the different rides at the park. And now obviously my list is not going to be the same as everybody else's, so I want you to comment down below your ranking of all the roller coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain. That being said, let's get right into the video, starting off with number 20. Magic Mountain has a ton of roller coasters, but actually 4 of those are kiddie coasters. So coming in at number 20 is going to be the smallest kiddie coaster in the park, the one coaster that I have actually not ridden, because you need to be below 48 inches to ride this ride, meaning I will never get the chance to experience it. But I'm sure Magic Flyer is great for the little kids in the park, and it is a very small stepping stone coaster for the other major coasters at Magic Mountain. Now, coming in at number 19 is going to be Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers. Now, this ranks just above Magic Flyer because it's actually a ride I can ride. Other than that, though, it's a very short coaster. The theming is alright, but it's still a really good ride for the little kids, and it's great that this park has a ton of family rides. But yeah, other than that, not much else to be said about Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers. And now let's move on to number 18. Now coming in at number 18 is Canyon Blaster. Now this ride is not much different from the last two on the list, but what sets it apart is it's a little bit of a longer ride, and it actually does have some airtime, especially if you sit in the back row. And yeah, compared to Speedy Gonzales, it's a much longer ride, but yeah, still not much to talk about here. It's just a family kiddie coaster in the park. And then moving on to number 17, we have the last of our kiddie coasters on the list. And now coming in at number 17 is our final kiddie coaster on the list, Roadrunner Express. This is the biggest out of the 4, but it's just still a cloned family coaster that you can find at many other parks. It is your typical family Vekoma coaster, but yeah, it's still fun. It's definitely the best of the kiddie coasters. It's a much longer ride, it's a lot taller than the other ones, and it's a really smooth ride too. So yeah, be sure to check this out if this ride has no line. But let's move on to the main coasters of the park. Coming in at number 16 is going to be Gold Rusher, the park's mine train coaster. And I just want to say, from this point on, all of these coasters are really good coasters. I like all of them. I don't think Magic Mountain has a bad coaster. But Gold Rusher is just the weakest out of the bunch. It's not very forceful, it's not really that long of a ride, and it's gotten pretty rough over the years. And coming in at number 15 is our first huge roller coaster on this list, Riddler's Revenge. Now don't get me wrong, I love Riddler's Revenge, but I just really don't like stand-up coasters. It's by far my favorite stand-up coaster that I've ridden, but just compared to the rest of the coasters in the park, it doesn't hold up. Also, I feel like it's gotten a lot rougher over the years, and I feel like I would definitely prefer it as a sit-down coaster. Now coming in at number 14 is a ride that I feel like is somewhat underrated. Revolution is a classic coaster at Magic Mountain. It was the world's first successful vertical loop, and surprisingly, it still holds up today. The loop is actually really intense, and the whole ride overall is really smooth. It's a long ride, it's forceful in some parts, and while it's not the tallest or fastest in the park, or even the most inversions, it's just a fun classic coaster that you'll always have a good ride on no matter what. It's always very smooth. Let's move on to number 13. And coming in at number 13 is going to be Ninja. This ride is also one of those rides that's really underrated. It's actually a really intense coaster, and it's probably my favorite suspended coaster that I've ever been on. While it is somewhat of a short ride, and the second lift kind of disappoints you when you get to the top and just go right back into the station, overall I think it's a really good ride. It's a very scenic ride, and it is really smooth compared to a lot of other aero coasters in the park. Now coming in at number 12 is a ride that I feel like is the complete opposite of the last two. Superman Escape from Krypton I feel like is one of the most overrated rides at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The launch is actually really forceless, and the views are good, but if you want the views, just go on Drop of Doom. You get the views for much longer, and it's actually a lot taller. Other than that, not much else to say about this ride, not really a huge fan. Coming in at number 11 is going to be Batman the Ride. Now this ride is a clone, but it's actually a pretty good clone, so this ride does fit in pretty well at Magic Mountain's lineup. But compared to the rest of the coasters at the park, it's just not as unique. You can find this ride at plenty of other parks across the country. But yeah, still a really good ride. I love Batman the Ride clones. And we've made it to our top 10. Now coming in at number 10 is Scream. Now don't get me wrong, I really like this ride. I think it's a fun ride overall, but just compared to the rest of the rides in the park, it doesn't really do much for me. The inversions are good, It's not super forceful, and it kind of is a little bumpy sometimes. I think Scream is just a solid coaster. It is a little overhated, I think, a lot of the time by people, but if you get a chance to ride it, it's not actually that bad. It does suck though that it's just in a parking lot and there's zero theming or even grass anywhere around the ride. However, coming in at number 9 is Goliath. I actually think this ride is pretty underrated. It is a really forceful ride, and the first half of the ride is actually really fun. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the mid-course because it does really slow you down a ton, but besides that, the ride overall is actually a really fun ride. You get a really good moment of floater after the second banked turn, and that first drop, if you're in the back row, can be pretty fun. Now, don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near as good as B&M Hypers, but it still is a really good ride, and I think it works well in Magic Mountain's collection. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Viper. I think this ride is one of the most underrated rides at Magic Mountain. It is insanely forceful, and the first half of the ride is so fast. If you're sitting in the back row, you get whipped over that first drop. It's actually insane. The ride feels like it runs so much faster and so much smoother than it used to. It's surprisingly a really smooth coaster. I would say it's almost smoother than Scream, which is saying something because Scream is B&M. But yeah, as long as you stick your head forwards and then put your head back for the loops, this ride can be really enjoyable, and it rarely ever gets any line in the park. So always be sure to hit up this ride if you can. And especially if you can get a night ride on this ride, it is insane because there's barely any lights anywhere throughout the track. Alright, but coming in at number 7 is Apocalypse. Now this ride is also a really good ride. I do feel like some people overrate this a little bit. I think it is a really good wooden coaster, and it sucks that it's the park's only wooden coaster, but overall it's a good ride. The theming is actually pretty cool. The queue is really interesting, and I don't actually mind waiting in it, especially because a good portion of it is indoors, meaning you're out of the sun. But yeah, the theming is really good overall, and it's a fun and intense ride, and some of the airtime can be really, really good, especially if you're in the back row. My one complaint I would say is probably the restraints. I don't know why, but on this GCI I just can't deal with the restraints. Coming in at number 6 is going to be West Coast Racers, one of the newest rides in the park. Now I do like this ride a lot. It's a really fun ride. It's not the most forceful or the most intense or even really have that much airtime, but it's just a really fun ride, especially because you get a race every time. But the restraints on this ride and the cars are so small that it gets really uncomfortable to try to fit in them. So that's why it's not much higher on the list. But overall, really fun ride. And coming in at number 5 is going to be Full Throttle, the other Premier Rides launch coaster in the park. And while West Coast Racers may be the longer and newer ride, Full Throttle still holds up as the better ride. The launch is much more forceful, and that loop still gives crazy hang time. And yeah, it is a short ride, and the brakes on the drop do suck, but even with the brakes on the drop, that drop is still incredible and gives crazy airtime. So that's why it comes in at number 5. And now we have made it to the top 4. Now these top 4 are all world-class rides. Each and every one of these rides could be my number 1 at the park. But coming in at number 4 is Tatsu, the park's large, huge flying coaster. I seriously have no complaints with this ride. It is incredibly smooth, it's forceful, and it gives the best views of the park. It really is terrifying facing the ground so high up in the air when you're already at the top of a mountain. Tatsu is a 10 out of 10 for me. Coming in next in number 3 is X2. Now this ride is just pure chaos. This ride is so insane. While it may not be the longest ride, and while it is kind of rough sometimes, sitting on the inside seat in the front row is one of the craziest, or even the back row, is one of the craziest experiences I have ever experienced on a roller coaster before. If you do a back row inside seat night ride, it is unlike any other ride in the world. And really, this ride is unlike any other thing in the country. It is seriously so incredible, and there's just so much to this ride that every time I ride it, I can't help but walk off with a smile on my face. This ride is really, really good, and that's why it ranks in the top 3 here at this park. And just barely missing first place, it was really a difficult decision between this one and the number 1, is Twisted Colossus, the park's RMC hybrid dueling roller coaster. Now I will say, if this ride dueled more often, there's a very high potential that it would be number 1 on this list. But because of how infrequently it duels, it's just really the coaster itself that you have to judge it on. And it is a really incredible coaster. I have no flaws with this one except for the fact that it doesn't duel. But it just barely misses the #1 spot, which goes to Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, the park's brand new for 2022 roller coaster. I was blown away by Wonder Woman Flight of Courage. Now I will say my first ride was towards the front of the car, and it was almost an empty train because they were not loading full trains when the ride first opened. But then I got a few more rides on it towards the back, and even some at night, and this ride is incredible. It seriously is so good. You have to come to Magic Mountain to check it out and ride it multiple times. Plus the line moves so insanely fast that you never have to worry about waiting more than 15 minutes for this ride. Magic Mountain seriously has a winner on their hands. This ride is so incredible, and I really highly encourage you to go check out this ride as soon as you can. Alright, and that's going to do it for our ranking of every single roller coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 2022. Now, just like we said in the beginning, this is just our ranking. It's our opinion of the ride. So be sure to comment down below what you think and how you would rank every ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain. And especially comment what you think of the new for 2022 ride, Wonder Woman Flight of Courage. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching World of Immersion. Be sure to check out our other rankings of rides across Southern California theme parks. And comment below the next park you would like us to see ranked. Thank you so much, and be sure to tune in for more videos like these.